Starting this a bit early just to make sure this is working correctly, I'm hoping. Okay, cool. Is the chat big enough to read? Barely. Let's fix that. Oh, my loud keyboard. Wish I could silence you. Well, gonna get started here in a minute or two. For anyone who is watching right now, if you got any questions anytime, please feel free to ask during the chat. If nobody asks anything, that's totally cool because I have this sort of guideline I'm going to try and follow and not get too distracted from. Overall, what I'm going to be covering here, though, is not how to make a quick buck or make 1,000 jillion gold. What I'm going to be trying to teach people tonight is how to better use the auction house, figure out what's worth buying, what's not worth buying, how to gauge prices for things, especially in regards to buying and selling upgrade. Alternatively, too, I might go over very briefly how to use the trade forums more efficiently, but if I do, that will be absolutely last. As my priority, I suppose, tonight will be on the auction house itself, because there's a lot of things about the auction house that are not nearly as simple as they should be. And I think it's because a lot of people don't realize that there's like one auction house for all of North America, so there's a lot to sort through. One thing I will start talking about right now, though, before I really get into the auction house itself, is recognizing trends for what sells and what doesn't sell will be your biggest key to making money on the auction house. Whether you're crafting stuff or finding it through just random killing of loot and bosses, you're never going to have that perfect roll that's usually for you, but quite often you'll have a really good item that's good for somebody else. And knowing whether that item is worth selling or not is kind of the big deal of things. I'm going to quickly just go to my mule list here. And you guys can see I've got tons of crap I've got on these various mules. Some are like half decent items. Some are really not worth keeping around. Some are just like too stubborn to disenchant them. But a lot of what you find is never going to be good for you, and that's just the reality of the game because of the way it's so random and how the rolls work. Now, the biggest trend currently as I make this video is the fact that the game is still technically new. I know it's been out for a couple weeks now, but um, Blizzard themselves even stated very recently that, only some, like, was it 1.9 or 3% of the population or something has reached Inferno mode. This usually translates as well to only that many percentage of people playing the game have reached 60. And that to me immediately says two big things. One is the fact that these people who hit 60 are going to be at the same roadblock we all were at one point. Before we could farm Butcher, before we could even do Act 1, there was the point where it was like, well, I've got no gear for this. You're either lacking in damage, you're lacking in health, and you just can't handle Inferno mode. So the easiest solution is just turn to the auction house, and being fresh to 60, you're not going to have hundreds and thousands of gold to spend on one chess piece. Instead, you're going to have, like, say, 500,000 gold from leveling that you really want to try and best outfit yourself with. And these people aren't going to be able to afford the 1300 damage items or, the 1 million chess piece that has 3 sockets and perfect stats. So, if you get gear that's not necessarily good, you can consider to disenchant it or salvage. Sorry, this isn't World of Warcraft. To salvage it, and you'll get like an essence and a tier out of it usually. Net worth of those two items is maybe 4,000 gold tops. But alternatively, you could turn around and try and sell these items for, say, 10k, 15k, which doesn't seem like a lot. And it's kind of like, well, that's not worth my time if I've got a couple million gold in my pocket already. But if you're constantly doing this, that's just easy income. And it's not exactly like a waste of money or a waste of your time to make 10,000 gold, 15,000 gold versus having salvaged the item and you've got like 4k worth of mats. But that's just option A. The other option B is, of course, just selling it. And, you're going to go to the auction house and you'll see, I'll just search for like whatever comes up first. All these rings, all these beautiful, magnificent rings. Even if you go like tens and 20s of pages back, there's still millions and millions of gold. So you got to realize that your market, if you're selling to the, what I'm going to call quote unquote poorer people, the people who haven't had time to farm, don't have all the gold yet, 50,000 gold is going to be a freaking deal to them when they see that compared to all these other rings, they'd have to pay out 300,000, 500,000. And it's just that's what they need to move forward. So you know that there's a demand for this market of like the crap items, just because there are people who have even worse items that can't afford the better items. There's kind of that disparity of a gap here. The other part of it too is crafting, which is, I'm sure if anyone's returning to this has seen my other video about crafting. Crafting is a great alternative for people hitting 60, but unfortunately they're not going to have all the materials to go craft. They can't afford to do it yet. They need these cheap items to be able to move ahead. Otherwise they're going to be stuck in Act 4 before they can even go to Act 1 in Inferno. Sorry, Act 4 Hell. So you got to kind of gauge what's worth your time and what's not worth your time. Personally, I enjoy going to the trade forums with a bunch of crap items, just saying like, no minimum bid, have at it guys, these are all my blues, all my crappy stuff. And it sounds like it would take a long time to do, but I mean, spending 5 minutes to copy paste a bunch of pictures into one and then saying, here's my auction thread, I'm just going to let it go for a couple hours, I'll check back in a couple hours and update the bids. I mean, the total time you spend on doing something like that is maybe 10-15 minutes, and you could easily turn what would essentially be garbage into 100,000 gold just by selling off 15 crappy items for 10k each type thing. So, that's just easy money base before you even touched the auction house. But going to the auction house now, we're going to go over a couple things here. First off, we can all cheer and be happy that the commodities market is back. You can look for essences, tiers, whatever, type in whatever quantity you want. You'd never have that many. 12. And you can see like, there's the average price per unit and the total amount you're going to get charged. Now this is what's cool. I actually need to buy 175 essences. So I will show you guys a really interesting thing about this that I didn't learn until recently. This is the average price of the last 10 trades. This doesn't, and the quantity up here for 175 doesn't mean that every single essence on the auction house currently costs exactly 1,835 gold. That's just the average of it. So if I go to buyout here and pay 321,000 for all of this, I will likely have a refund in my completed tab waiting for me. Well, it takes a second to load, but I'll check back in a moment. The reason for this is the auction house just goes, and when you place an order like this, it buys whatever the cheapest is up to the estimated price that it gave you. And if there's anything in between that costs less than the estimated price it gave you, it just refunds you that at the end. So I'm probably not going to actually end up having paid 312,000. Yeah, there we go, 6,300 gold refund. It really varies because the prices of these things are jumping around a lot recently, but that's just basically how the averages work, and it's kind of cool. That's about it. And that's for the commodities market. That works for any commodity if you're buying more than one item at a time. If you buy one item at a time, it will of course give you an exact price for that one item because it's looking for the lowest to begin with. But if you're looking for commodities, you're going to craft, buy stuff, whatever, just keep that in mind that you're not always going to pay the exact price. If anything, you'll get gold back for it. And the other cool thing here too, by the way, in your auctions list is it keeps track so you can kind of see what sells for you and what doesn't. Like let's say you've been finding tons of boots all over the place, or you've been crafting tons of boots all over the place. You can see whether your boots went and sold, and for how much they sold for, so you can kind of keep track in your head, well, this is about a good average. Or you can see whether they didn't sell and they came off to you. Like, if the same item comes off the auction house again and again, you're going to see it in this list and you'll know this item's not going to sell, it's not really worth it. Mr. Bear asked why can't I see past page 46 on 200 weapons. This is because Blizzard kind of, in my opinion, dropped the ball a bit on the auction house. So if we just go to 200 weapons and we don't put any particular search values and you go all the way back, it's probably going to stop around the 1,000, 1,200 damage DPS weapons. Let me just go as far as I can go. I think 46 is the limit, yep. But you're going to know that there are people who have put items on the auction house that have far less damage than that, like, 800 damage 200 weapons or 1000 damage 200 weapons. This is just the limit Blizzard has because this is one auction house for all of North America. And this is one of the biggest downsides to the auction house. Because basically you know already, if I don't have a weapon that I'm trying to sell for more than 1262 damage, it's not even going to show up on the auction house, which means it's going to rot for 36 hours and you won't sell it. This is, which I will get back to later at the end of this auction house discussion. This is the advantage of using the trade forums, because there are people who want a 1000 damage weapon. They're perfectly happy with a 1000 damage weapon. They don't need a 1200 damage weapon. And they're also very happy paying, say, 100,000 for it, opposed to 1 million, because they don't have the gold for it. So if you're going to try and market something that you see is just not going to show up on the auction house, and you know it's just going to rot if you put it up, go to the trade forums. But I will go over that more in detail later. Getting back to the trends thing, though, I want to talk about, it's really important for yourself, if you're selling lots, to keep track of what does and doesn't sell. Like, for example, if I go through this whole list here, you can see I had a great day where, like, every single pair of boots I made sold. Very easily, too, and for a decent amount. They only cost 88,000 to make, and each of them gave me a 2,555 gold return. So it's pretty good. Or 255,000, sorry. My English, right? And something for even more. So, but then you can see if I scroll down a bit more, you'll see my bracers, some of the amulets I put on the auction house. These didn't sell. They came back to me several times, actually. If you go back up here, you'll see their names again, and they're not sold. And that says to me, well, it's either time to go to the trash forums and try and sell this item for very cheap, or just suck it up and disenchant it. And if you salvage it, then you can use that for more crafting, but I think it's worth more to get gold for it. Sell a crappy yellow for 10,000 gold, say, you can go buy 3 tiers of that very easily. It's kind of how you want to translate your materials around, but that's not what this is about. Now, going to the auction house here, I want to talk about how to search for items that are worth money. So, for example, here, let's go to one of my mules and pick a random boot thing. I'm looking for one